All right, so good evening. Good evening, and welcome back or welcome to JPCE Watchdog News. I'm Jared Campbell, and this evening I want to bring you some of the latest updates on escalating global tensions and the critical developments shaping our world as we speak. We'll dive into the growing strain between NATO and Russia. And tonight, as Moscow warns a potential confrontation within the next decade, we'll explore the United States push for Ukraine to expand its draft age, Ukraine's response, and the broader implications of regional stability and global security. And also, another breaking news: the assassination of a high ranking Russian general has further inflamed the already troubled conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Stay with us as we unpack the facts, analyze the stakes, and examine what this means for nations on all sides of this conflict. So first things first this evening, let's talk about the assassination of the Russian general Igor Kirillov. So in a new development, which happened today, so in development this evening, adding further tension to the Russian-Ukraine conflict, Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, head of Russia's radiological, chemical, and biological defense forces, was killed in Moscow on December 17th. Kirillov and his aide died in an explosion reportedly orchestrated by Ukraine Security Service, SBU. The attack, described by Russian officials as an act of terrorism, has drawn international scrutiny. Kirillov was targeted with a scooter-mounted explosive device containing 300 grams of TNT. Which detonated as he exited a residential building in southeastern Moscow. The SBU later claimed responsibility, labeling Kirillov as a legitimate target due to its alleged involvement in chemical weapons attacks against Ukrainian forces. Kirillov was a polarizing figure, right? Both celebrated and hated. As the leader, he managed Russia's chemical and biological defense strategies. Western nations accused him of facilitating the use of banned chemical weapons in Syria and also in Ukraine. Accusations that led to sanctions by the UK, Canada, and others. Despite this, Russian officials held him as a fearless exposer of what they described as Western chemical weapons provocations. The accusations against Kirillov. Western governments and organizations alleged that Kirillov oversaw chemical attacks in Ukraine, leading to significant casualties and thousands of poisonings among Ukrainian soldiers. He also implicated in disinformation campaigns, including unfounded claims about U.S. funding bioweapon labs in Ukraine and allegations of Ukrainian dirty bomb. We've talked about that before. I know I've mentioned that many times, right? The Russian response. So what is Russia's response, right? So Russia's response to all this. The assassination has sparked outrage in Moscow. Former President Dmitry Medvedev, dude's crazy, called it a cowardly act by the Bandera regime in Kiev. State Duma speaker described the incident as evidence of the criminal nature of the Kiev regime. Now, as we continue to build, so ongoing NATO and Russia tensions. So Russian President Putin has warned that continued Western support for Ukraine, including financial aid, weapons, and military assistance, is pushing Russia toward a red line. During a meeting with defense ministry officials, Putin accused the United States of seeking to weaken Russia and achieve a strategic defeat. He criticized Washington for inflaming tensions, echoing Cold War era tactics. What are some key points? Western support for Ukraine. Putin claims the West's continued financial and military aid to Ukraine aims to deliver a strategic defeat to Russia. Putin also criticized the West for escalating the conflict by sending weapons, military advisors, and also mercenaries. The red line, retaliation. Russia is being pushed towards a red line, says Putin, beyond which it will respond decisively. Putin also accused the U.S. of using fear tactics to manipulate its population, similar to Cold War approach. approaches. Interesting point. So NATO military buildup. NATO is increasing its presence near Russia's borders with over 100,000 U.S. troops now stationed in Europe. It's huge. Hey, get ready. The alliance is expanding its military activity, not just in Europe, but also in the Asian Pacific region. Immediate range missiles. The U.S. plans to deploy missile systems with ranges up to 5,000 kilometers, which were previously banned under the INF Treaty. Russia has refrained from deploying similar systems, but warns it will abandon this restraint if the U.S. proceeds with deployments. Hybrid warfare accusations. Putin has accused the West of waging hybrid warfare, right? To impose its own rules on countries that resist, including Russia itself. What are some implications, right? Impacts. Geopolitical tensions. The situation exacerbates tensions between Russia and NATO, I say so, increasing the risk of confrontations, especially in Europe and Asia Pacific. Continued rhetoric and actions could further solidify Russia's alignment with China and other anti-Western blocs. Arms race risk. Putin's warnings about deploying intermediate range missiles could trigger a renewed arms race, heighten global security concerns, right? This escalation may destabilize regions where the U.S. or Russia deploys such systems like this. Impact on Ukraine conflict. Western aid to Ukraine remains a critical issue for Russia, which sees it as an external interference and a threat. Escalation rhetoric from Russia could discourage diplomatic negotiations and prolong the conflict. Global security dynamics. NATO's expanded presence in Europe and Asia Pacific could provoke military countermeasures from Russia, further militarizing strategic regions. Countries in Asia Pacific may feel caught between Western alliances and Russia-Chinese opposition. I think so. Domestic messaging. Putin's statements serve as a dual purpose, signaling Russia's resolve to the West while rallying domestic support by framing Russia as a victim of Western aggression. Interesting. In conclusion, Putin's warnings reflect deepening divisions between Russia and the West, with high risk of military escalation, regional instability, and a potential arms race. The situation demands careful international diplomacy to avoid unintended consequences. So Russia is preparing, right? So here's some more notes, right? So potential conflict with NATO. Russia's defense minister warned of possible war with NATO within the next decade due to NATO's evolving doctrines and policies. Wow. NATO's July summit strengthened Ukraine with new air defense systems, funding, and bilateral security agreements. Escalating NATO tensions. NATO's growing military presence in Europe beyond has prompted strong warnings from Russian leadership. Putin accused the U.S. of preparing intermediate range missiles, talking about this, deployments in Europe and Asia Pacific, stating Russia would abandon its voluntary restrictions if this happens, right? Russian military deployment. A new military branch dedicated to unmanned systems will be operational by late 2025, signaling Russia's focus on drone warfare. That's huge. Casualty and figures dispute, right? So let's talk about this for a second. So the Russian Defense Minister, Andrei Belosov, announced preparations for a potential conflict with NATO within the next decade, citing shifts in NATO's doctrine and decisions made at its July summit. Belosov highlighted NATO's increased support for Ukraine, including air defense systems and financial aid, and warned of escalating risks of confrontation. There was also some casualty figure disputes, right? Belosov claimed Ukraine lost almost 1 million people, a figure far higher than Kiev's or Western sources estimates. Ukraine reported 43,000 deaths and 400,000 injured, while independent estimates range between 60,000 to 100,000 killed. Putin's claims on Russian progress. Putin also highlighted recent Russian battlefield gains, claiming control over 189 settlements this year. He noted that over 1,000 recruits joined the Russian military daily. Wow. What are some of the implications? Risk of NATO, Russia confrontation. Belousov's statements underscores increasing geopolitical risk as NATO's strengthening of Ukraine and Russian military preparations escalate tensions. The 10-year timeline signals a long-term shift in Russia's defense priorities, likely leading to increased military spending and readiness. Putin's threats to lift restrictions on intermediate-range missiles in response to U.S. deployments could revive a dangerous arms race. These developments may destabilize Europe and the Asian Pacific regions critical to global security. Russia's focus on unmanned systems aligns with modern battlefield trends, mirroring Ukraine's emphasis on drone technology. It's a new war, right? This shift will escalate competition in drone warfare, impacting future conflicts globally. Russia's exaggerated claims about Ukrainian casualties reflect ongoing information warfare aimed at undermining Ukrainian morale and Western support. Disputed figures highlight the challenge of obtaining reliable casualty data in war. I think so. NATO's increased defense spending and presence near Russia may prompt closer Russian ties with countries like China and Iran. Russia's preparations for long-term conflict could have economic consequences domestically, diverting resources to defense spending. In conclusion, Belousov's statements and Putin's remarks reflect Russia's heightened focus on preparing for prolonged conflict with NATO. The implications include rising military tensions, the risk of an arms race, and further polarization of global alliances. It provides the need for careful diplomatic engagement to prevent these type of escalations. We're almost done. We're going to end by talking about Ukraine's draft age debate. This is interesting. I want you to listen to if you live in the U.S., okay, listen to what your government is doing, and don't think it won't have impact on us. The United States is reportedly pressuring Ukraine to lower its draft age, further citing historical precedents like the Vietnam War. Ukraine currently conscripts men starting at the age of 25, but has resisted lowering the age to 18, citing equipment shortages as a key constraint. Key points. The average age of Ukrainian troops is 43, with challenges related to age and fitness. Zelensky improvised that younger soldiers are better suited to modern warfare, but acknowledged the difficulty of equipping additional brigades. What are the impacts? Right? Well, here's some impacts that tied in the assassination of the general. So the assassination is likely of the general we talked about to provoke retaliating measures, increasing the risk of escalation of conflict. Russia has framed the attacks as an act of terrorism, further polarizing international narratives about the conflict. So now let's get into the debate here. So public sentiment, right? So lowering the draft age could spark political backlash within Ukraine. Modern warfare demands younger troops, but delays in Western aid complicate Ukraine's mobilization efforts. Current draft age and U.S. pressure. Ukraine lowered its draft age from 27 to 25 earlier this year, but remains reluctant to reduce it further. U.S. lawmakers are pushing Ukraine to conscript 18 to 25-year-olds to increase troop numbers. Age and fitness of Ukrainian troops. The average age of Ukrainian troop is 43, significantly older than historical averages from other conflicts. Zelensky has also argued that younger soldiers are more physically fit, quicker to adapt to modern warfare technologies like drones and cybersecurity systems. Equipment shortages. Kiev cites delays in Western military aid, stating that drafting more soldiers without necessary equipment makes little sense. Zelensky also noted that Western allies have only equipped 2.5 out of the 10 brigades Ukraine requested. Avoidance of mobilization. Many Ukrainian men avoid conscription by staying abroad, avoiding formal employment, or invading draft officers internally. Over 20,000 men have reportedly fled Ukraine illegally since the war began. U.S. historical context. U.S. lawmakers compared the Ukraine situation to the Vietnam War. where men aged 18 to 26 were drafted, but this led to widespread anti-war protests and draft evasion. What are some of the implications? While Ukraine needs younger, fitter troops, the lack of equipment makes mobilizing additional soldiers impractical, limiting Ukraine's warfare fighting capacity. Delays in military aid continue to hamper Ukraine's ability to field effective forces. Lowering the draft age could spark public backlash, especially among families of younger men, potentially causing political instability. Listen attentively. Historical comparisons to Vietnam highlight the risk of conscripting younger individuals, including desertion and societal resistance. Ukraine's emphasis on younger troops reflects the demands of modern technology-driven warfare, such as drones and cyber operations. Older troops need help with these advanced tools, creating an imbalance in operation efficiency. The U.S. pressure to lower the draft age underscores the divergence in perspectives. While Western allies focus on troop numbers, Ukraine prioritizes equipment and sustainable mobilization. In conclusion, Ukraine's reluctance to lower its draft age highlights the balance it must strike between workforce needs, public sentiment, and resource constraints while facing pressure from its Western allies to sustain the fight against Russia. As the Russia and Ukraine war drags on, global tensions show no signs of abating. The assassination of the Lieutenant General Igor Kilorov has added a volatile new dimension to an already fraught geopolitical landscape. While NATO and Russia continue to edge closer to confrontation, with the higher stakes, the world must tread carefully to avoid escalation that could have catastrophic consequences. And so, before I close out, what are some of the implications on the assassination? I kind of put those notes in the wrong place when it came to the general, and I apologize. So, escalating Russia-Ukraine tensions. The assassination of the general is likely to provoke retaliatory measures, increasing the risk of escalation of the conflict. Russia has framed the attack as an act of terrorism, further polarizing international narratives about the conflict. NATO's growing presence near Russia could lead to an arms race, especially with threats to deploy intermediate-range missiles. We talked about that. And lastly, the rising tensions are solidifying Russia's alignment with anti-Western blocs like China and Iran, about to get hot and heavy. And that's where we'll end this evening. Here's everything I have. So stay in tune to JPCE Watchdog News for further updates on these critical developments. Remember to like, share, subscribe, whether on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble. Please share out the videos, whether it's the news or even some of my Bible studies. Share it out right to the world. Thank you all again for following. Hope you enjoyed my updates. I love you all so much. I'm out. Right. Thank you all again.